it.
You can edit this out, so it'll just be more editing.
True.
But
I know. I'm just
doing it. You got it.
So sorry. Okay.
And their reviewers and also their work. What was your experience when you ran across Alex?
Running off like randomly in different directions. I'm sorry.
Hi everyone, it's the Rattler newspaper, and we are here today with our very first podcast episode.
That's confetti. So we've been planning this project for a while now, and we're super excited to kind of revamp it. This is the podcast where the editors of the Rattler are bringing St. Mary's campus and San Antonio related events and news to you. So to start,
we're going to be talking about book marketing, and it's a really big topic right now. You can see it all over social media. You're like being introduced to many different books through social media. So today we're going to talk about a little bit more about that. And
but to start, how was your winter break, Victoria?
It was pretty good. It was I feel like it wasn't long enough, but it was okay. I spent a lot of time actually I really wanted to expand myself and read a little more, and that's perfect for this podcast because I was introduced to a lot of different books. But I'm ready for the school year.
Yeah, me too. I kind of wanted to get back into the routine of things, as nice as break is, and of course it never seems long enough. But in the spirit of today's episode, are you reading anything now?
I'm reading the Britney Spears autobiography, and that's about it right now.
Do you have any thoughts on it so far?
No, I just purchased it, and I'm like looking at reviews and everything. I'm gonna plan to read it this weekend actually, and then I can come back and tell y'all more about it. But I actually had I had points to get a free book. So so I decided to pick that one out. So that's the first step that I've done so far. Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one. She's had a really crazy life, just to put it lightly. But I've heard a lot of people were really interested and intrigued while reading it, whatever that means specifically. But I hope you like it. It seems interesting. You. So what I'm reading, I guess I have to share because I'm a book nerd, is recently, I will say I can be critical about the things that I like. I'm reading this book called Winterwood. It's a young adult novel written by Shay Earnshaw. I read her previous one called The Wicked Deep, which was pretty good. It's kind of like fantasy / maybe a little bit slightly scary, slightly a little bit spooky. It's really interesting, lots of like witchy related stuff. But it's not perfect. I'm gonna say it's like not perfect, but I'm enjoying myself enough to read it. So I don't know if you're interested in like witchy related atmospheric things, check it out. Her books aren't very long, but there's a little bit left to desired for the plot, but also, like I said, I can be a little critical about the things I like, and that's okay.
No, yeah, I'm so glad to be talking right now with Ashton about books because Ashton is super knowledgeable in books, and we actually are gonna have a guest who's also very knowledgeable about books. So I'm super excited. She is a former Rattler alum, and her name is Sophia Kussel.
She is also a communications major and part of the combined master's program here at St. Mary's University. She's also minoring in visual communication design. So she's kind of got her feet wet in terms of understanding social media marketing, as well as communications in general, and especially how that impacts publishing and kind of books that people may read for school in their downtime. That's her jam. So we're really excited to welcome Sophia to the podcast today.
Yeah, so she will be joining through Zoom right about now. So thank you, Sophia, for joining us today. I am so excited for you to be speaking with us about this topic. I know that you're really knowledgeable about this topic, and I kind of want to learn more about books. So I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about marketing specifically.
Yeah, so do you want to share a little bit about yourself and also kind of what led you to become more interested in researching how social media influences the world of publishing, or just talking about publishing in general, or your experience with books on social media?
Yeah, so to start off with, I'm not like an expert in publishing, but I am an avid reader, and that's my experience. I'm also addicted to social media, so that's helped me. I've also had internships as a social media intern. I've worked intimately with TikTok, so I know the sort of impact TikTok has on marketing specifically, and how it's sort of like the main hub now for really promoting a product, especially books. I mean, Book Talk has like accelerated the publishing industry like tremendously. There's been a huge uptick in print books that we haven't seen in the last decade, which we can quite frankly attribute to TikTok as well as the COVID, which a lot of people depended on social media during that time and got really into reading, and that has continued an upward trend. But also, I think it's important to like remind people, because of social media. I mean, books are now digital too. Like in 2023, worldwide readers 66 million books, like in total, which includes audiobooks, digital magazines, from streaming services like Libby and Canopy. So it's been a 19% uptick from 2022.
No, and
Sorry,
I'm
it's
not.
information overload.
No, yeah, like I totally believe all of that because there's a lot of books that I did not hear about until recently, like you said on Book Talk. It's all over social media, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about on how like marketing has really accelerated all of many different books, and people have access to so many different books and are able to learn about them too. Like recently, I've heard about so many different books that I want to get into as well, but yeah, like I definitely think marketing is such a big part of just informing people of all these books that are out there that
Yeah.
they otherwise wouldn't have heard about.
And just a question for both you, Victoria, and you, Sophia. Do y'all use Book Talk? And also, do y'all think that some of maybe like the popular books, I guess you could kind of constitute that you may see on your home pages or for you pages, do you think those reviews or those discussions really hold any weight into how you approach your own reading interests, or does it not really influence you? You're not really, let's say, you're not really buying into what the people on Book Talk are kind of advocating for.
I'm gonna sorry. I'll start off. Yeah, I use Book Talk. I do actually use Book Talk. That's primarily what my algorithm feeds me, actually. But there's different like layers to Book Talk, frankly. Like I'm more on like classical literature on my high horse, and like horror. That's where I stand. So there's horror talk. But no matter like where you go in Book Talk, the sort of romantic genre sort of engulfs Book Talk primarily, which is not my forte, but it's also, if you look at like publishing trends right now, what you see mostly being pushed out at like a pretty rapid pace. I don't know if you've guys taken a look at like the Target book area. It's mostly romance, and it's mostly geared towards women. So I think women are also specifically leading the charge in publishing in TikTok as well. Like you see mostly female creators, I think. And I can go more into that, like, but I'll wait a little bit.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Victoria?
No, yeah, that's really true. So over the winter break, I've actually learned like I would just be on social media and I would see like specifically on Instagram Reels. I don't use TikTok that much, but I was on Instagram Reels and I would see these videos of different books, and there was one in particular that I saw a lot of called The Little Life, and like I knew that it was a really sad book because a lot of people were posting like videos of themselves crying while they were reading it. So then, I mean, I usually don't like to read about really sad topics, but like these videos were everywhere. People were just opening these books and then crying, and I was like what is in that book? And like it actually made me like curious, and I wanted to kind of expand the what I would read, even if it's sad. Like I normally don't read that, but sometimes it's good to read like some of these very human topics. So that's one of the things that I would see all over Instagram Reels. I don't know if y'all would see that on social media.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I would say that at least why I asked that was because I myself am also very much on Book Talk or Bookstagram. I recently started my own Bookstagram. I'm not very good at it because, like, I guess for Bookstagram specifically, it's very much about how nice you can make the books look. So that makes sense of, excuse me, why a lot of print books are being sold more now is because you can take pictures of them in really cute settings and it looks really cute to some people. But yeah, I've been also on like BookTube, which is like where a lot of reviewers post their reviews in full length, which is my form of content. But I know people like will prefer short-term content on TikTok to get quick reactions. And there's both, you know, downsides and positives to that as well. You can have multiple different people giving you maybe similar or differing opinions on a book in a short amount of time. Or you, if one of them interests you in particular, you can find their longer form content, which I find really helpful when people go into depth about what they did or didn't like about a book.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Sophia.
Personally, what I love about book talk is the book talk drama. That's what I'm really there for. Honestly, sometimes I get book recommendations, but I just want to see people tear each other apart. It's the same on BookTube, like Book YouTube. You'll see like hour-long, multi-hour-long videos going in depth, just tearing apart a book. Like Light Lark, Rebecca Yarros, Fourth Wing, Akatar. I haven't even read these books, frankly. I'm going to be honest, but I just love hearing like these in-depth, like critical thinking, but also, frankly, dramatic readings of it. There's also a lot of controversies that happen with TikTok, like authors, I call them, or like people who get really popular on TikTok. They're often self-publishers, which is pretty interesting. But there's a lot of drama that goes on. I mean, one of the examples would be with Matt Shaw, who's like an extreme horror writer. He is an independent publisher. It's an example of like how independent publishing has become popular because of social media and because of the internet. But yeah, so there was a controversy. I don't know how long back. I think Ashton knows about this too, about him being really upset by a Goodreads reviewer or a woman who reviewed his book. I don't remember what it is actually, but Ashton, if you could like give some context. I remember watching.
So I watch a lot of those similar videos that really go into depth about certain authors and then in conjunction like their books. That's something that I'll talk about too, especially with Light Lark and also Matt Shaw, how social media kind of has made I guess the distinction between author and their work almost indistinguishable. So when they are marketing their books, it's also them that they're marketing and not just the content itself, which is really interesting. We can talk about that. But basically, he wrote a book, and there was a particular reviewer. She was also like prominent on YouTube. She had a few videos for reviewing particularly like extreme horror books in that genre. So she wasn't new to the field, I guess. And she didn't like it. It wasn't her forte, and she explained in like a video covering like a few books she had read within the year. And he, to put it lightly, did not like that at all and vocalized that in a way where a new book he had coming out, he dedicated the book to her and was very visceral with his reaction toward her reviewing it negatively and seeking her out in her YouTube comments and just making her feel uncomfortable. So it was really strange to see an author kind of just like react so viscerally and find ways to communicate to this reviewer that he was not a fan of what she had to say about his book, which was honestly pretty valid if it wasn't her forte and she provided critiques. Yeah, so I hope that kind of puts it into perspective a bit.
But there's a lot of, I think, controversy surrounding authors versus their reviewers and sort of that distinction between them, the separation, like the sort of environments that they inhibit. There's sort of this idea that authors shouldn't really be inhibiting the same places as readers do and reviewers do because reviews are meant to be for the reader. So there's that controversy. I think it's interesting though, because honestly, I think a lot of the book talk drama overshadows the actual content of the book, actual critical analysis. I don't think you're going to get much of that on TikTok, honestly.
But how did you come across, like, let's say somebody who's really active on TikTok, which would be Alex Astor, the author of Light Lark and her sequel Nightbane? How did you come across her? Because I remember Victoria sent me a reel that she had done, and she was telling me that she really wanted to read Lightlark, and I was like, I know this author because she has been active on TikTok. So what was your reaction when you stumbled across Alex Astor, or did you seek out that specific genre of book?
Yeah, well, I honestly think I kind of seeked it out because during winter break, I was just scrolling and I really like that aesthetic of like, like princesses and like old fashioned stuff and like castles and horses and things like that and like dragons. I really like that aesthetic. So like I was just scrolling, like looking at videos, and I like those videos specifically. Like I really interest me, and I think that's what her books are about. Like a lot of that stuff. And so I think that's why I like the algorithm just showed me that video. And then she would do summaries of like, oh yeah, my book is about these things, much of the things that I really like. But I had no idea that there was like a controversy about it. Like she made it seem like her videos were so cool. She also seemed young. So like I would like to release a book one day. So that also caught my attention. Like she seemed young and she was showing that she had a lot of success. She would post that she had books on Target already, like so I just thought it was really cool, and I would see a lot of. I think because I saw that video, I just kept on getting more of her videos.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of piqued my interest at first. I had no idea like who she was or anything about her books, but I mean that book TikTok, like it really helped me learn more about her books. But yeah, I never saw like the controversy, but I guess we can learn more about that.
Yeah. Did you hear about hers?
No. Was
You
it?
did?
No, I didn't know there was a controversy. I just assumed, was it like her like misspeaking Scottish?
No,
Or she
that
was
was,
mentioning her book?
we talked about that with the Bloomberg article that had coined the term is TikTok turning the publishing world into fast fashion, and
I
talk
read
about
that
that
article.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Miss Alex Astor, her, I guess, controversy, and also if you Google her name, it also will come up in the recommended suggestions. Also, Alex Astor controversy, because she had gotten so popular on TikTok, and she was really skilled at marketing it, by saying things like, "Would you like to read a book that has a tournament that happens only every 100 years?" and using different like leads to get people quickly interested in her story, by any means possible. So she would also talk about herself in conjunction with the book. So by being young, she would say like, "Oh, well, I'm a really young author that worked really hard to publish my book. I'm one of probably the youngest authors to come out and do this. I've had challenges." She would talk about her struggles with publishing. But the controversy kind of comes with some people digging more into her background and being interested about where she came from. So there's talk about like her class status and how much of a struggle was it really for her to publish this book. There was some also discussion about like how she said this was probably the first book that she published, or attempted to publish, and that wasn't true. She had tried to publish a middle grade series a few years prior, and it just didn't work out. So she had experience with talking to publishers, but it was just this idea of who was Alex Astor really? Was she really successful as she said she was, as she presented herself to be? And also, when Lightlark first came out, all the things that the tropes that she had said would be in there. She said it was going to be like A Court of Thorns and Roses, and also compared it to The Hunger Games. Very big titles if you're going to compare your work to. And then she, by the scenes that she kind of gave sneak peeks to her audience on TikTok, when they got the book, they realized that a lot of these scenes had been drastically changed from what she teased, or just not in the book at all. So they were very upset about that, and they discussed this in reviews and everything. So that's just one thing where it seemed like her identity and her book were kind of melded together. It's a really interesting thing to look at. So
Yeah, I sort of remember that a little bit now that you mention it. The thing with her marketing specifically, besides like the nepotism and everything, but that sort of controversy, she really focused on tropes, which I think is a trend that's really taking off on TikTok specifically, and in book publishing. Books are being marketed with tropes in mind. So it's not really about originality or like new ideas. It's about specific tropes, like I can't think of any of them, but like, oh my God, wait, no, because most of them are inappropriate, honestly.
Inappropriate.
Most of them are inappropriate. But like, yeah, like fantasy, like romance twists, like Game of Thrones sort of deal. I am not explaining this well.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But books are being mostly marketed towards tropes, specifically towards women.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that there's this urgency to push out books faster and faster and faster. We saw this with The Fourth Wing, the new book. I forget what it's called. Fire
Oh, Iron
Mountain.
Flame.
Yeah, Iron Flame.
How I know that off
Iron
the top of my head.
Flame.
I
There's a
hate
bit of
how
controversy with it being pushed out so soon as well, because there was, I think, the publishing date was actually pushed forward by the publishing company. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a bit of controversy with that. If you see like these writers like Colleen Hoover pushing books at like a rapid speed, there's a bit of controversy with that. I think that's why the Bloomberg article sort of compared it to fast fashion. But yeah, so I think that's some people's concerns, specifically in that genre. But
yeah, that's a good point to bring up too. And like you said with tropes, do y'all really like, I guess, think of tropes whenever you want to think of something that you would like to read? Do you look for specific tropes, or how do you go about reading books or finding a book to read, I guess? You'll think about the process.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, again, like I really like reading like fantasies, like I really like the olden times, so like classics like Pride and Prejudice, things like that. Like I really like just like anything like that seems oldish, like horses, castles, things like that. I really like, which is why when I came across those like Instagram book videos, I like was interested in it, and then but it's really unfortunate to kind of come across those videos that say, yeah, we're about this book is about this, and then you read it and you find out that it's not about that,
Right.
and that kind of makes me think like maybe there's like a lot of fake marketing, so it makes me like be more careful with what books like I actually want to read, and if they're being truthful about what their book is about. So, but that's usually what I gear towards too.
Yeah.
there's a hyperfixation on trends, I think, which was also created by social media and like how books are marketed now on social media, not just TikTok, by the way, but Instagram, YouTube, everything. I mean, authors are now expected to be their own like agent, basically. Especially with self-publishing now, like they're sort of completely dependent on themselves. And social media is a great way to do that. So the one way that they can successfully market their books is through trends. Whatever the next book is, like I'm the next Fourth Wing, or I'm the next, Divergent, or Katniss Everdeen's in this book, But whatever's popular at that moment, whatever genre is popular at that moment, they are going to try to market to that. So when people finally read these books, they're often, maybe sometimes, disappointed that it's not specifically that trope. But that's how authors need to do to be like successfully marketing their books.
No, that's true. I'm kind of like guilty of like following those trends because recently I've been wanting to read like a lot of biographies, like the Britney Spears biography. I actually got that one. Like I got an ebook for that one, just because I'm interested. Like I've seen a lot of videos and I'm like I actually want to know what this book is about. And same with Little Life. Like I haven't read it yet, but I caught my interest because a lot of people were posting about like them reading it and like crying to it. So I definitely am guilty for that. But I have seen a rise in autobiographies as well from celebrities. And they kind of have an advantage because they already have a good marketing team. So, but that's just something that I noticed.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
I don't think that's all bad though. I think we talk a lot about like, oh, social media is like ruining publishing, like they're pushing out books like way too fast, or like they're marketing specifically towards women, like with these trends and things like that. But if you think about it, I mean, it's promoting reading, it's promoting literacy. Like I said, like ebooks skyrocketing, even above like audiobooks, at least the recent statistics I've read, like from Overdrive and things like that, who've created Libby and Canopy. And furthermore, like the idea of like specifically marketing towards women has been sort of a trend that's been in publishing like since the dawn of publishing. Specifically, like let's take Gothic romance, for example. Like this was during the 1960s and 70s. Publishers now understood like there's this whole demographic that's sort of not been really touched on, which is women. And so gothic romance, capes, vampires, castles, dark stormy night, romance, like books like Rebecca. Gothic romance could even technically be, you could say, Shirley Jackson's Haunting on Hill House Haunting. Oh my God, I forgot the name. The Haunting of Hill House. Hill
Yeah,
House, it's not going to happen right now.
Shirley Jackson. Check her
Yeah,
out.
Shirley Jackson. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. VC Andrews, Flowers in an Attic. It sort of created this bridge between modern horror and Gothic literature. And it sort of pushed that genre to what it is now. And furthermore, let's look at a more recent example, domestic noir. That's always been sort of pushed towards women. The idea, like, they didn't want to be called thrillers because it's marketed specifically towards women. Those kinds of novels were really popular, I think, up until recently. And now with the like TikTok, I think we're seeing a lot more popularity within fantasy, within like just straight up romance, like smut specifically. We can go into that, but I don't know if you want to. But it really, women have a lot of power in what's popular with publishing, I think, is just one example. Again, like if you go down to like the Target aisle, what are you going to see mostly? Romance, right? It's mostly targeted towards women. So I think it's an interesting perspective to look at the role women have with literacy. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I've never thought about that. That's like really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't
Like
know.
I
What
could
do you guys
see
think?
Target the same way because like I definitely did notice that. I just didn't realize it
Mhm.
that a lot of it is romance books, especially books that I've seen on social media. So that's really interesting.
And even things like, have y'all heard of like the celebrity book clubs, like Oprah's like book picks and like the Reese Witherspoon book club? Speaking of like domestic thrillers, I guess, she tends to have her, I'm gonna call it like her stamp of approval, her like book club picks on lots of domestic thrillers. So it's really continuing that trend kind of like being marketed for and to and by women, like certain genre elements. I could really see trends in like what was picked for Reese Witherspoon's book club, and also kind of came to see like why I don't really agree with a lot of the things she picks, because it is also a very, in a weird way, like it's a, not maybe too weird, but it fits a very specific niche of people, and what genres they're interested in. But it's also a good way to see like if you don't like the genre, then you can find another group of people or reviewer or author that has something for you. So yeah, I don't think it's all bad. And that way, like when you think about what you're seeing and what you're telling, or people who are telling you what you should read, you can make those decisions for yourself. I do think though that it is important to talk about like sometimes like a book's content and getting emotion and showing like emotional reactions to books. So like for A Little Life, that book has explicit, very graphic, very visceral content that happens to a lot of the characters. And so I think whenever I see these videos of people like just sobbing, bawling their eyes out to a book that is, yes, in a umbrella term, it is a sad book, but having all these content, there are no content warnings, except for by the publishers that have put out Hanya Yanagihara's book. But a lot of these people who are like, you need to read this book, it's super sad, but they never tell the people they're recommending it to what is specifically in it. There's lots of trigger warnings for that book that I don't think are always talked about. So yeah, if like, I don't know, like, do y'all think that reviewers or people that read these books, readers specifically, are they obligated to talk about, are obligated to give trigger warnings, or maybe heads up of like, this book has this content, maybe not related to tropes, but like specifically things that could potentially be upsetting to certain readers?
I'm a little conflicted on this one because books themselves, I mean, some books like do have trigger warnings. I think we're seeing that more recently with modern like self-publishers specifically, not by like major publishing companies. Simon and Schuster is not going to give a trigger warning. But if the back cover of the book, when a person picks out a book, doesn't have like a trigger warning or anything that would indicate something graphic happening, why should the person advertising do it? Because I mean, you're picking a book off a shelf. People don't usually know what they're getting into once they pick that book up, right? But at the same time, I understand like if someone picks up this book expecting something to just be like, oh, it's just gonna be super sad. I don't know what I'm gonna come into. I'm like 13 years old and I saw this book on TikTok. Wow, I want to cry too. Like it's gonna be a little bit traumatic, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, now with social media, with the internet and everything, you can look up reviews. Most people do their research on the book before they buy it. I mean, I religiously scroll through Goodreads to see what's going on, and usually they will give trigger warnings. They have Wikipedia pages. Is a 13-year-old just walking into like a bookshop going to do that? I don't know, but I
Yeah.
think people are more tech savvy than we think.
Yeah.
And on the topic of like crying, that sort of like trends, I guess you could say crying to like a little life, it's kind of like a great marketing tactic. It's the same as like with the movie like Poltergeist or like Poltergeist 1, 2, like that found footage like movie. When they first started marketing it, they had like this footage of like real people in the movie theater screaming their heads off. They had like the night vision. I don't know if you guys remember those commercials, but like it's like the scariest thing ever. And they didn't talk about the movie. That was the trailer. The trailer was like people screaming their heads off to this movie. It's kind of the same thing. You're showing the like extreme emotional reaction to get people reading it, right? It's not necessarily talking about the content at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Good points. What about you, Victoria?
I'm sorry, give me a minute.
That's okay.
I have to cut this out. Um, I was gonna say something and I forgot.
That's okay.
Editing.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna edit all of it.
We're gonna edit this out, viewer.
Yeah, I
Not
was gonna
gonna
say something, but I totally forgot. Oh, okay. No, yeah, that's a really good point because one of the things that I like Ashton mentioned, there's a lot of trigger warnings, and these days there's a lot of kids using TikTok, and like for my sister, for example, she loves reading. She has TikTok. She's younger than me, and if she were to come across a book like this, like A Little Life, and would say, "Oh my gosh, like I wonder what's in this book. I really want to read it." She'll tell my mom, "Can I get this book?" And my mom will say yes, and she'll get it. And like I feel like it can be a good thing that you learn a lot about all these books, but at the same time, like there's also a lot of people that are on TikTok looking, especially kids, and sometimes like they'll just have access to that book because they're influenced and they're exposed to all these different things that they wouldn't have been exposed to. So I can see like the good side and then the bad side as well. So I think it's just like important, especially for parents as well, to like look into that and do the research too. Even books, because you wouldn't think that with books. Like when you think of books and kids reading, you get happy, you know. So like even with that, like to do research on that as well is something that we have to do now, more of that nowadays.
Yeah.
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 And you can argue that's the parents' due diligence, right? To see what
Yeah.
the media their children are consuming. But let's put
Mhm.
this into perspective. A Little Life is 832 pages.
Yeah.
What,
It's really
what
long.
10-year-old is going to be reading A Little Life? That's too long. I'm not going to get to that part. All right.
That's true. They might give
So,
up.
and it's a difficult read, frankly, for maybe middle schoolers, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
think high
true.
schoolers they can handle the contents, the subject matter, at least the way it's presented. It's not like it's smut. I think it's
Yeah.
unfair to like put that like in the same category of trigger warning.
Right.
This is talking about like real things that happen in real life that are heavily traumatic. There are like reasons that it's put there. It's not there just to be there. So I mean, there's something to learn from it. There's something to gain from it.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think middle schoolers are going to be particularly seeking out this book. There might be some, but I think they're going to be pretty advanced readers. And again, there is responsibility upon the parents to see what media their children are consuming. I guarantee they're consuming way worse media online than they are reading a book. Let's be serious here. Because if they're
Yeah.
not checking the book, they're not checking their online history.
Yeah.
And is it really up to influencers to be controlling what like books are? I mean, I guess there is some responsibility there. I do feel there is some responsibility because we can't just say, oh, well, they have no part in this. Like they shouldn't be responsible if somebody like comes
Yeah.
across it and then they might have their own personal experiences and be like very upset. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think,
To
Christian?
your point, yeah, to your point, Sophia, like I do think that people in general, authors, other readers, reviewers, publishers, should give more credit to readers. They do their research. I know that I'm going to tag her because I think she's really good. If you like more book content, you should check her out. Reads with Rachel. She's a book reviewer on YouTube, and she conducted a poll. I don't know if she has, I don't think she has social media anymore, but when she did, she conducted like an Instagram poll, and also I think on her Twitter, when she had it, of like, what do you read the book summaries on the back of a book? Do you look for tropes? And she was asking her audience what are the ways that they look for, or how do they pick up a book that they want to read? And usually, what she came up with, or the majority of responses were, nice cover, read the summary, then look for reviews, which I think is really interesting. Of how even people that could be really young will find ways to see who is reading this book that they've picked up. Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? And yeah, so I also think that in terms of looking for reviews in favor or against a book also really help. And that's kind of how I decided that I did not want to read A Little Life, because from what people have reviewed, like, yeah, it's sad, but does it really talk about the themes in a nuanced way? And does the author do their due diligence to kind of talk about these themes in a way that I think would be very valuable to hear about? So, not taking away anybody's agency that would like to read it, but seeing these discussions of people who might have been through these traumatic experiences or faced similar things, and not feeling that their experience was highlighted in a way that somebody who hadn't gone through that doesn't understand, was also very interesting. So yeah, I think readers definitely should get like a little more credit about doing their research and kind of making that decision of, you know what, I think I'm going to read this. I think I'm going to take time out of my day, out of my busy schedule, to sit down and read a little bit of this day by day, or maybe maybe in the span of an afternoon. I don't know. Always depends on the reader. But yeah, very good points. To kind of sum this all up, so where are we going with book talk? Is book talk really like fast fashion? Is that even a good like comparison, to compare fast fashion to the publishing world right now? I don't know.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think TikTok's that different than how the publishing industry has been. I think, frankly, the digital era has completely changed most companies, most marketing strategies, including publishing. But trends have come and gone, like since the dawn of publishing. Trends have moved it along. I mean, let's look at The Exorcist. After The Exorcist, there was a plethora of books focused entirely around the idea of possession during the 60s. We've always used trends in publishing. There's always, the era of like the golden age of this, the golden age of that within literature. And I don't think this is any different. I will say that it's more fast moving. It's harder to keep up. There's constantly the new thing, the new trope, the new trend that you have to follow. And I guess it's hard to keep up with. So publishers are constantly changing their content. And I think they're focusing maybe a little bit more on tropes and trends, because that's how you're going to get readers.
Right.
Again, I think it's a matter of perspective. I think TikTok does sort of focus more on, maybe, I'm not going to say less important genres because that's not fair, but more on sort of fast, light reads, not really like classics or things like that. But I mean, for example, A Little Life is very in-depth. It's very thematic. It has a purpose behind it. And that's a hugely popular book on TikTok right now, including, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, Babel by R.F. Kuang. I don't know if I pronounced her name right. But like, these are like really well-written books that can be considered classics maybe in the next decade. So it isn't all just, like romance and like Colleen Hoover. There are like some good things I think that are coming out of like TikTok.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Victoria? Gonna keep up with book talk, Bookstagram?
Yeah, I mean, I used to read a lot in like middle school, high school. I kind of stopped in college, but again, I think I'm gonna start up again just because I'm learning so much about many different books. Like recently, I usually don't read autobiographies, but I'm reading the Britney Spears one. So, and then there's like a lot of other ones that I'm interested in. So, I'm definitely, it's helped me a lot. I'm learning a lot about different books. I'm learning a lot about their controversies too. And I used to never like even look at the controversies or anything. So I personally appreciate it. It is moving really fast. A lot of people have access to all these books now, but yeah, it's I guess I would compare it to fast fashion, except with fast fashion, it's kind of like you just don't use it again. Like you just forget about books. But I honestly think there's a lot of books that we'll remember. Like we're actually seeing a lot of like memorable books that are really making like an impact in social media. They're leaving an imprint and even creating trends, and so yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think maybe that illusion is a little bit of a stretch because the world of fast fashion is also really complex and also really damaging, and affects a lot of people, especially in uh, third world countries as well, if you could constitute that. And it goes into more like discussions of like human rights too, which I don't really know if that applies necessarily to
No.
publishing, other than books just coming out very fast and
Yeah.
depending, like you said, on your perspective of are they of quality. But I do think that there's something to be gleaned from people having access to books, book reviews on social media. And I think, like as people grow and change, so do their tastes and their interests change, and they can make those distinctions of what they would like to read and what they would not like to read. I just think that also, as somebody that really values people that take the time to explore these books, in earnest, and kind of talk about the craft and the themes that people that do have a platform just take some consideration into, kind of talking about what they liked about their books. I mean, it's all well and good to say I really liked this or I didn't like this, but I really appreciate when somebody goes into depth of something they like or something they didn't like, and I find a lot of value in people that are willing to share that. And so I just hope that people that are active on these, on their platforms, kind of take that into consideration. But yeah, I mean, I have hope. I don't think it's all a lost cause. There's some great people out there and great authors that have gained a lot of traction from social media, and I hope they do well. I hope all these authors do well and just do their due diligence, for their audience. You know, so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just one last point for the article where we've been talking about this entire time. Basically, what has like sort of sparked this conversation, which the Bloomberg article, which was called "Is TikTok creating?" Dang, I just forgot the article name. Ashton.
It's okay. I'll pull it up. I'll pull it up for you. I got it right here.
I'm so bad with names. It's actually bad.
It's okay. That's why I linked it. TikTok is turning the publishing world into fast fashion.
Yeah, so the article that we're talking about that we're focused on is the Bloomberg article, is TikTok turning the publishing industry into fast fashion. I don't know if I got the title right, but I don't believe there's a lot of articles like this that we've seen popping up, specifically centered around publishing and literature and TikTok. And a lot of it's alarmist. And I think it's because people are scared of the internet. People are scared of social media. It's new, it's strange, especially in publishing. It has left such a big impact on it. And it's frankly scary, and we don't really know what to do with it. So only time will really tell.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way to kind of summarize anything, unless you had anything else to share, Victoria.
No, I think that's it. I learned a lot about books, and how it's impacting and showing a lot in social media. So thank you, Sophia, for sharing your knowledge with us.
Yes, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your care for books as much as me and Victoria are starting to care about them too. So thank you.
Okay. Are we
Yay.
section?